In terms of overall behaviour, it certainly is not good by historic terms. But in terms of public opinion, it's likely to be viewed, well, shall we say, with some negativity when people are presented with the details in terms of the artificial construction of a survey, for instance. But in terms of the wider public, is it going to have a difference to voting intention, for instance? I think it will have less of an impact than, say, the Dominic Cummings incident with Barnard Castle. I think it will have less of an impact than even the David Cameron lobbying story, neither of which had a particularly long-term impact on the trends. My suspicion is that if it were a sex scandal, or if it were something easily understood along the lines of an MP buying a duck house on expenses, it would be something that the public could relate to very easily. But I think the complexities and obscurities around lobbying and the fine detail of this story make it more difficult for the public to latch onto. And I assume that is what Boris Johnson and his team were hoping when it came to their manoeuvres last week. They thought that they effectively could get away with it.
I mean, it is intriguing, as Alastair Graham was saying, that we live here in 2021 where a company can say, here's 50 grand to an MP and say, yeah, put a good case for me, not only on the floor of the House, but with ministers and special advisers. I mean, I've been in this game for an awfully long time, and it is jaw-dropping that is still allowed within certain regulations that occasionally get breached. But that it is allowed is laughable in a democracy.
Yes, and I think many of the British public would agree, and the fact that it's still allowed after so many of these incidents, that I think would be a particular rib basher for many of the public who hear about these things time and again, and so it would niggle with them that time and again we hear about people of various different levels of seniority of various different parties being embroiled in these actions, and so reform is something for which there would be public support. But the nature of that reform and the detail around that reform, that's not really something that the British public are particularly clued up on. Understandably, given the complexities of the situation, if you were to say to people, should MPs be able to work with charities, for instance, to put forward their case, and should they be paid for that? I think in some circumstances people would be a lot more positive towards that than they would be towards other circumstances. So it does get complicated quite quickly.
I bumped into David Chidgey yesterday when I was out shopping, now Lord Chidgey, but of course famously the Liberal Democrat who had a triumph in Eastleigh all those years ago in a by-election. And he was arguing in the House of Lords the other day about chalk streams and keeping them clean, and got a very positive response from the government. Nobody's paying him to do that. He's doing that because he cares about it with a passion. It is not beyond human imagination to do the right thing for the right reasons. But here's a final point to you, Joe. And we both love this game, and we're both Democrats to our pounding hearts. One thing that strikes me is a spin-off effect of this is for the hard left and the hard right, who can say, there you are, you see, parliamentary democracy, bourgeois democracy, as the Trots call it, simply doesn't work. And the anarchists say, there you go, don't vote, it only encourages them. Democracy potentially is in the dock.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And that's the real long-term concern with these things, because individual events probably won't have much of a turning point effect. They will be talking points, but not turning points. But the long-term cumulative effect of these one after another lets in people who can feed off the dissatisfaction, distrust, and disapproval, and they can be on either side of the spectrum and present not policies of their own, not things to make the country better, but simply the suggestion that they are not the established group, and therefore they should be selected. And that, in certain circumstances, as we have seen in other countries, can be a problem. But all I would say is that this is not a new phenomenon. And in 1834, when the Houses of Parliament caught fire, so memorably pictured by the painter Turner, crowds did gather on the other side of the Thames to cheer. So this is something that has been going on for some time and will, I'm sure, continue for some years yet.